Welcome, everyone, to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get into this brand new episode, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to follow along and join in all the fun with the From the Shadows podcast, just go to our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. Got links to all our social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok even. And then if you want to get a hold of me or follow me, you can go to Shane Grove Author on Instagram. That's the easiest place. You can send me a message there. Now, if you have a sighting or an experience that you want to share with me and possibly come on and share that experience, go back to our website on the contact page and you can send me an email. I'll read it. I'll get back to you. And hopefully you can come on and share your experience. So with that being said, everybody knows that we love to hear stories from Ohio people. And I'm a little torn because we've got a great Ohio person on with us, but the story kind of took place in Pennsylvania, but we'll have to let that slide. We'll have to let that slide for so joining us on the show is Greg from south of Youngstown. Is that where you're living right now, right? South of Youngstown. We had a great conversation before we came on here. He's a Penguin. He's a Youngstown State Penguin. Played football under the great, at least I say great, Jim Tressel. So welcome to the show, Greg. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Shane.
So let's hear your story. I want to hear. I've refrained from getting into any details. I know a little bit about it, but I want to hear what happened to you, when it happened, and all the circumstances surrounding it.
Okay. Well, I remember the date specifically. It was Friday, September 21st, 2018. I'm a big trout fisherman, so that's why I'm in Pennsylvania all the time. Pennsylvania has a great trout stream system, and it's literally 20 minutes to a half hour from me, or 40 minutes or so. I have access to between 6 and 10 different trout streams. So on this day, it was a Friday morning, September 21st. It was dreary, little drizzly, and I'm going trout fishing in Pulaski, Pennsylvania. There's a small creek that's probably maybe 20, 30 feet wide, maybe averages 2-3 feet deep. And in order to get there, there's like a little brewery type thing there that has since been upgraded in the last 5 years. But back then, it was just a gravel parking lot that you would park in, and you would have to have entered from that spot. There was nobody there that day. This also is part of state game lands, I believe 154. It's a stretch of woods that's probably 10 miles by 2 miles, and it's all bordered by farms on all sides. And there's a trout stream that runs through the middle of it. And so I get there in the morning, park in this gravel parking lot, and I've got to probably walk 200 or 300 yards through like a marshy area, then through some cattails, and then get to the corner of the creek, which is about maybe 150 feet into the woods now. Now I'm into the game lands area. And I fished this initial spot for maybe 20 minutes or so. I'm not getting anything. So I'm moving upstream now, which is going to take me deeper into the wooded area and further from that gravel parking lot. I'm probably now maybe a quarter to 3/8 of a mile up in there. And so I move another maybe 200 yards upstream, and I'm fishing this other little pool. And I mean, it's September 20th. It's still very green and lush in there, very dense. The foliage, a lot of rose bushes, just whatever, heavy, dense area. And I'm wading in the creek. I have thigh-high waders on, and I'm fishing, and All of a sudden, I would say approximately 100 to 150 feet upstream of me. So further up, if I were to continue to go upstream, that's where it would be. I hear a rock comes ripping through the leaves, and thud. I hear it hit the ground. Like my guesstimation is 100, 150 feet up ahead of me. And I clearly hear it going through the leaves and, and hit the ground. I thought it was weird, but I continued to fish, and I don't know, maybe 45 seconds or so later, another one. And I still continue to fish, and this happens 10 to 12 times over the next 5 minutes. And it did cross my mind, that what this possibly could be, but I don't know, man. For some strange reason, I had every intentions of still going upstream. I wasn't getting it. I had no hits. I wasn't getting anything in this hole. And here's where it really kicks in. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, this force of energy just blows through my whole body. And that's the best way I can describe it. It blew right through me, and every single hair on my entire body went boom, just like electric. And it almost like took my breath. It was just incredible. It was like there was vibrations, everything just going through me. And what was really weird, and I always, when I tell this story, I say this, the next thing, I was in the most incredible fear in my life. And I'm afraid of heights, but this was just the most intense fear ever. And the next thing I knew, I was 20 feet downstream. I had already started to leave. And it's like, it was weird because I didn't even make that decision. It was like the decision was made for me. It was just so weird. And I'm splashing through 2-3 feet of water, and I'm going back downstream, and I'm making a lot of noise, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, man, if there's something coming, I can't hear it. So I turned to look back in the direction where those rocks were hitting up, up ahead, and I didn't see anything. It's just dense green in there, and it was foggy and dreary that day anyways. But I was able to jump up on the bank, and what was amazing is that intense fear was quickly replaced by a need to survive. And it was just the most clear, like, mental state. And I got up on this bank and flew through jagger bushes, everything, like they weren't even there and I needed to cover a good 3/8 of a mile at least of dense woods and rose bushes and everything to get out of there, to get into like the cattail marshy area where it would now start to open up. And I got out of there and was shook. I mean, it was just absolutely blown away by what had happened. Didn't see anything, didn't smell anything, didn't hear anything, but went fishing somewhere else, the rest of the day. But when I got home that night, first thing I did was I Googled, what animals can throw rocks? And what came up was primates, monkeys, apes. Well, there's no monkeys or apes in there. But then I had never even heard of this. And this popped up, was rock throwing and infrasound. And I had never even heard of that. And when I dug into that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what happened to me. It just, and then when I've now, and I've studied it, I've looked up, I'm really educated on infrasound, and it's basically, the human ear can hear between 20 decibels and I think like 10 to 15,000 decibels. On the upper end of like 10 to 15,000, somewhere up there, is like a dog whistle. It's so high piercing that you can't hear it. Well, on the bottom end of like below 20 decibels is a growl that is so loud you can't hear it, but you can feel it. And that, when I read up on that, I was like, that is exactly what happened to me, because it rocked my body. And I mean, the hair, the vibrations, everything, and whatever intent to get me out. I knew without even knowing. It's like I had already decided to leave, and I didn't even make that decision. It was like, it was like some innate, that fear, flight syndrome, whatever. But it was like, I immediately knew, and I had every intentions of continuing to go upstream. I was blowing this off. And I've told this story, and I've been on other podcasts too, and the other people have asked, like, that's really weird that that it did cross my mind. But it's like, for some reason, and it, I don't know why. I guess somebody's once said that your brain is like a Rolodex of just what it's experienced, what it's known. Well, this was something you don't know. So it's like, I just kept saying, nah, can't be. And I'm going to continue to go upstream. And well, that didn't happen. But, so, I firmly believe that was an infrasound blast that followed the rock throwing episode. And from what I understand, the rock throwing was to get me out of there. It could have been like a rogue Bigfoot, a young one. Maybe there was something, nursing one in the area. And I was blowing off. The rock throwing wasn't getting that warning, and then got hit with an infrasound blast. Well, I can't figure there's no other explanation for it. And to kind of lead into this, what's really weird was that I would say about 2 months earlier, 2 or 3 months earlier, maybe back in like May-ish, about a mile downstream in that same stretch of woods, but in the same creek, but downstream, my son and I, who he would have been like 14 at the time, we came fishing. We were in that creek, and we came to a corner spot, and we saw a single rock hit the top of a tree. And we watched a rock like trickle down the side, just like that Plinko on The Price is Right. We watched this rock fall down the tree after hitting the top of the tree, but there was only one rock that day. And we thought that was weird, but there was nothing further that day. But also in that same spot where that single rock was, maybe a couple weeks after that, I went to that spot. My son went to a different spot. And so I was by myself. And when I come up on that same corner, there was an X placed in the bank of the creek, right on the inside bend of this 90-degree turn. There was 2 6 to 7 foot sticks placed in a perfect X, and they were inclined about 60 degrees. So the bottom 2 parts were set into the mud at the side of the creek, and the rest of the was formed going up the bank. And and I thought that was really weird. And so what I decided to do is, like, I'm going to disassemble this, throw it up on the bank, and I know I'll come fishing here again and see if this is reconstructed. Well, I did go back there maybe a week or so later, but the sticks were still laying up on the bank where I had thrown them. But I've, since learned that that can be a territorial mark that they use. And this was about a month.
Don't go past sex. Yeah.
And I have since, I actually was just fishing there within the last 2 weeks or so, but a lot easier now. There's no foliage, so you can see into the woods. You can see way up ahead of it. Totally different in the middle of September when it was just dense, lush green, and you couldn't see 15, 20 feet, and especially the time of day and the dreariness and everything. But yeah, so those 2 things happened maybe 2 or 3 months before what happened to me in September, about a mile upstream, but in that same stretch.
So the first thing is thank God it didn't keep you from fishing. It sounds like you.
I know. but what it has done, and I hate it, and I'm fascinated with this whole thing, but I hate the fact that I'm never the same in the woods again. I'm on a constant, I don't know, like I'm just I'm just on a heightened, state always. And if something don't feel right, I get out. What I do though is I pray. Before I even go into the woods, man, I ask God to cover me, and just to whatever of anything evil that might be in that woods. But I hate that part of it, is that it's changed how I feel about that. And I love trout fishing, and I probably don't go into remote sections like I did, or if I do, it's with more 2 or 3 other people. But it's on my mind. I probably think about that every single day since then, and probably will till the day I die.
And and since you have kind of dove in deep into this topic, trying to figure out what it was, you've probably heard that people that have these experiences, they never stop thinking about them. Some people it really, really affects them.
That are done, they never go back.
So I want to go back to when the rocks were getting thrown. Like, how big of rocks were these?
I would just by the sound and I would guesstimate maybe the smaller than a racquetball, something along that. I don't know. I really can't tell. I can only gauge by the sound that it was making as it went through the leaves and branches and hit none of them hit the water. They all hit the bank. It was up ahead, and I didn't see them. I could only hear them happening, but you could hear the ripping through as it's coming.
So you knew it wasn't something just dropping out of a tree. Right. It was coming through the trees with some force and hitting. And I mean, look, why would you think anything of that? You don't expect somebody, and if you did think something was getting thrown, you think it was a person out there. You certainly don't think it was a Bigfoot.
I knew that it was. When I think back to that moment, I knew that there was no way it was another person. You would have had to have entered the woods before, where I did. There's no other way to get in there, and there was nobody there. And why would you be there on a dreary, Friday morning in September? I mean, kids are in school, and so it did occur to me. I mean, but it's like for some reason it didn't set in. And I had, like I said, I had every intentions of continuing to go upstream, and then that happened, and then boom, that was the end of that.
Well, and then hearing the story you said that happened previous, you're already a mile past where that X is basically, if we believe that this is what those things really mean, that it's right. Don't enter this. You're already a mile past where.
Yeah, but that X was almost that would have been on the lateral border of this 10-mile by 2 miles stretch. So it would have been like it bordered like one of the farms, farmland area. I don't think that X would connect with that spot, but not saying that they're not all through that. But that X was really close to Route 551 that runs through Pulaski, within maybe 200 or 300 yards of a country road. So it bordered like a farmland area. So I mean, this place that I entered in is actually on Route, is it 108 or 208? I forget I think it's Route 208 that runs through Pulaski, Pennsylvania. It actually cuts through the middle of the 10 mile. If we're calling that 10-mile by 2-mile area like a rectangle, Route 208 is going to cut right through the middle of it. So I'm kind of, you know what I mean? I got you. The middle, where that Route 551 would be on the lateral border over there. So not sure that, I don't know.
Well, so the other thing that a lot of times when I hear stories about the infrasound, there seems to be like the whole mind speak thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that's the first morning, if, like get out or whatever. And then some people feel, they get hit with that infrasound. Now, you didn't experience anything like that.
No, there was no, right. I've heard, I have since heard that. No, when that hit me, it was, like I said, the thing that was weird though is that this initial, just in most intense fear, and then like before I even gathered my senses, I was already 20 feet downstream. Like it was like that, like what's weird is I always felt like that decision was made for me, not even by. It's
like that was your primal
yeah,
instincts kicking in,
yeah,
that even though you didn't know up here what that was,
yeah,
your DNA knew what it was. And it's like, okay, we need to get out of here.
right. It went from intense fear, and that quickly got replaced by a need to survive, and it was a clear focus on getting out of there. And like I said, I went through these rose bushes and everything like they weren't even there. Normally, you got to pick your way through stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just jaggers.
And the weird thing is, and that I hear from other stories is that does seem like to be the behavior when people are out fishing versus when they're out hunting.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's because these creatures know that you can't aim a fishing pole at them and shoot a hole in them, or if, so they just feel like they can be a little more aggressive in getting you out of there or not. It's just weird how they just seem to know what
Yeah.
what the difference
Oh,
is.
yeah. And you, right. I mean, where a gun, they probably have, if they're watching you, they know what a gun can do. Because, I mean, it appears that they herd deer. And so if hunters are in direct competition with their food source, where I don't know, I mean,
Well, you would still probably, so either way, if you're out there fishing or hunting, you're in direct competition with their food source, because
yeah,
I'm sure they eat as much fish as they do, as much as they eat whatever's available. Something. So they obviously have seen the effects of what a gun does versus the effects of what can be done with a fishing pole, and I think it seems like they can sense that you're not going to be able to hurt them or threaten them with that fishing pole, and then thus they can be a lot more aggressive, which, okay, I don't know, I don't know, it just it's terrible. I hear that story and I can tell how it affected you, because
oh,
you're still, and it's terrible that you have to go through that,
yeah.
but I guess the alternative is if you ignored it and you kept going upstream, what the heck would have happened? You
I don't.
know?
I know that when I think of that, oh my gosh! I mean, at what point was I gonna, was that thing gonna make itself visual? And I've been asked many times, by other Bigfoot, investigators, like you had to be close to one of those bluff charges. That would have probably been next, if you would have. But there was no ignoring that infrasound blast, which I didn't even know what it was at that time. Not till I got home that night and started to dig on, Google search to find out, well, I couldn't believe when I came across it. I was like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me, because there was no explanation to me. It was like what went through my body was just absolute, this energy source, and these vibrate, just boom, just rocked me, like just, and so them things are, you can't hear it, but that growl's entering your ear canal, so it's that's jarring all
Mhm.
the bones in your ears and whatever. And I mean, there's people that can have organ damage from infrasound blasts. I didn't have any of that. I wasn't sick or anything like that, but it just hit me that way, just like
That was going to be my next question. If you like once you got out of there, did you have any physical effects
No,
from it? You just kind of,
no,
so,
no headaches, no nothing, nothing.
so with that being said, now, and you keep going back to fish and you're hyper vigilant. Is there any other precautions that you take going out there?
Uh, Other than prayer, no.
Well, hey, look, that's probably as good as anything. You
No,
know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and that spot that where that happened is now like private property, so you can't even really. You would the only way to fish there would be to enter the creek, that other spot, and traverse it from a mile and a half away, and it's not stocked like it used to be. So it's that section I don't go to anymore where that happened because they don't really want you on there. You can't enter through that parking lot anymore because it's a business now, and it's grown in the last 5 years. So you would have to enter through the stream a mile away, and it's not worth it anymore for me. So I don't fish there anymore. But where that single rock and where that X thing, I do go there, not that frequently, but I do.
Now, so in your course of trying to figure this out, have you found out other people's experiences in that area that have ended
Yeah,
up reporting it?
there is a there's a it's called the Pennsylvania Bigfoot project. There's a lady over there in Lawrence County. Well, she's now she's the president of the whole thing, Mary Fabian. I don't know
Yep.
if you've heard her. She's great.
Yep,
And
we've had her on the show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm friends with her. We've
uh, Fantastic. And there used to be it was a Lawrence County chapter of it, and they would have little meetings. And yeah, and when I went to those and told this story 2 or 3 times. Now they combine Lawrence County and Mercer County in Pennsylvania, and but they haven't had a meeting in like a local meeting in 6 to 9 months at least. I mean, there's been other ones like in other areas, but not that Lawrence or Mercer County chapter. But yeah, there has been. I know actually of another gentleman that said that he knew somebody that pulled into that gravel parking lot, and when he looked straight back up, there's a high tension line that passes up through there. Somebody said they saw one visually. I never saw anything that day, but this guy told me that somebody saw one pulling into that parking lot when their headlights flashed up into the straight ahead up into
like the clear cut.
Yeah, there was a clearing up ahead, and they apparently saw one. So,
well, yeah. So let me ask you, while you're out there fishing, is there a scenario in which you would like to actually see what it was that chased you out of there?
no.
So you wouldn't want to have like.
Go ahead.
Hold on. You wouldn't. So you don't need the visual confirmation to know.
No, I'm fascinated. It's such a I don't know, a struggle here because I'm fascinated by it. But I love to trout fish, and I hate that happened because it has changed me that way. But I don't want to see one close or have another encounter or anything like that. I don't. But now on a daily basis, I'm constantly scouring through, the podcast websites, little things on Facebook. I'm constantly listening to other stories and investigating. And I love hearing like what I'm telling now. I love these kind of things, but I don't want to see, because I've had people say like, hey, once they see you, or once they know you're in an area, they mark you. Oh my gosh, Mary Fabian's got some incredible stories of ones that have like followed people for like 50. I mean, unbelievable stories. It doesn't even make sense, but they can track you, or they can somehow. I don't know. No, I don't want that.
Well, I mean, look, I tend to believe, the human aspect of them is they can recognize that you've been there before, And, and in much the same way, the animal aspect, if they can sense you, through your scent or through whatever other kind of animalistic characteristic that they can pick up on, why wouldn't they remember, I mean, hey, look, I'm on the mail route every day and the dogs they know what I'm doing there
Right.
every day. And they're,
That's a dog.
That's just a
It
dog.
feels like this thing might have, and then maybe the intelligence of a human and the instincts of of whatever animal. I don't know, but
The best of both
yeah,
worlds, it
right.
feels like.
Yeah.
Feels like. Well, Greg, I appreciate the fact that number one, you listened to your instincts and got out of there. And, I know you got to have a certain amount of toughness to have played college football in the 80s. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Because there's no joke back then.
Not the wide receiver though, so I don't know.
Well, look, that's even less. It takes some toughness to have played back in those days for sure. It's not the like two-hand tap stuff they do today. Anyway, so I appreciate that, but I'm glad that you agreed to come on and share this experience, because I do think, just because you didn't see one, okay, I do think it's important that people who have these experiences that are so similar to other people's experiences share them, because I think it opens other people's minds to, hey, I was out in the woods and I had some rocks thrown at me, or the same thing, or I had this feeling come over me, and not always saying that it's Bigfoot, but that's out of the ordinary. Okay, rocks don't get thrown at you in the woods ordinarily, and you don't feel this sense of dread because there's a squirrel nearby. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's very important to share this stuff and let people hear these stories and understand that you don't just have to see one or have one scream at you to sense fear and danger, and that there's something going on out there. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us. And if you do happen to be unfortunate enough to see one, look, you know how to get a hold of me. I would love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it. So,
okay.
But thank you. Hey, thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Okay. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out. Ha 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 ha.